fisherman's house. More fish, more often.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast series. This episode is titled Summer Sheepshead from Ocean Piers, featuring Erin Weaver of the YouTube channel Fins and Fossils. She operates out of the Topsail Island area, and we're going to be covering such areas as why Sheepshead from Ocean Piers, and then we're going to move into when, what bait, rigs, and we're going to finish with a discussion of Sheepshead behavior. My name is Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post, and Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community of North Carolina since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, premium content, and here in our latest and greatest, the podcast series, where we reach out to captains and friends up and down the North Carolina coast, asking them to share with us their thoughts, their insights on how to catch more fish more often. And I am enabled by podcast co-host David Harden.
Hey, Gary.
Hey, Dave.
What's going on?
Man, I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation. Erin Weaver, in addition to being a podcast guest, she also helps us out with our weekly fishing reports. So, consider her a friend and looking forward to talking fishing.
Part of the family.
That's right.
That's cool. All right, well, before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. We like to thank Port City Signs and Graphics.
We do. We love those guys. We love Sabrina. Man, and they continue to help me out. As far as meeting some deadlines, as other small business owners are, I believe, man, we're always busy and sometimes miss details. And Port City Signs and Graphics has certainly helped me out in a pinch.
That's right. Well, let's take a look at some signs. I'm going to show you two signs. You tell me which one was made by Port City Signs and Graphics. Another sign made by someone else.
I'm very good at this game.
Okay, here we go. Here's sign number one. Get that tattoo. Your family is already disappointed. That's sign number one. Let's move on to sign number two.
All right.
This is I believe, an illuminated sign for Cambridge Fitness.
So at nighttime.
So that's the way it looks like in the day, but it lights up at night.
Everything they do just seems to be so clean, so professional. And what they do is a wide variety of signage, man. That's for sure.
And they do everything. They're all over town.
I know.
All over town. All over town.
All over town.
Next up, yourboatmoney.com.
Scott Bradshaw, yourboatmoney.com, and New Coast. That's his, his affiliation.
That's true. Here, you want to watch some special effects?
Yeah, he's
from
good.
yourboatmoney.com.
Yeah, he's good.
Here we go.
We have to charge him extra for
That's
delayed presentation.
Delayed
it's going to
logo.
cost. That's for sure.
Definitely.
Man, as those who watch the podcast know, I like to brand Scott Bradshaw as information based. I mean, of course, he's in business to make money, provide for his family, but he gets it. He knows that being a man of information, a resource, can just open up doors and lead to more healthier relationships in the business world. I love his business model. I love what he's about, and I love that he supports this podcast. And I hope you guys keep that in mind when you're looking for boat financing options.
Right on. Finally, we have Marine Warehouse Center. Terrell and the crew.
Terrell, Emmett, and crew ran into Emmett at Great Outdoor Provision Company today, man. I consider him a good friend too. Love what they're about. Sales, service, and parts. Show me a commercial, please.
Here we go.
Matt with Marine Warehouse, excited to give you guys a huge update. We're now carrying Seabourn and Spider boat line. Of course, we have the newest models of Carolina Skiff, Sailfish, Sea Chaser, and Pan Marine. With over 60 boats in stock at a Wilmington location, let's schedule a sea trial and let's get you on the water today.
Marine Warehouse Center. They got my boat on the water.
They got your boat. They got my boat on the water
years ago, and it was on the water last night. So,
all right.
Thanks to Marine Warehouse Center.
And my boat wasn't on the water last night, but it was on the water the night before. So look at that. Look at Marine Warehouse Center enabling us with the water lifestyle.
They're changing lives.
Sales, service, and parts. Jokes.
Oh, that's right.
We're still working on it.
Are we working on jokes?
But I'll give it to Terrell, man. At least he tries, man. He tries. And I mean, I guess you'll say he tried with this one. This one's short. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's going to be over before you know it.
Okay.
All right. A dyslexic man walks into a bra.
I like that one.
Dude.
Yeah, I like
do
that
too.
one. It's good. I like the short ones. The short ones are good.
Hey, Terrell, the audience wants more short ones. I think that's a compliment, though. I'm pretty sure it's a compliment, Terrell. Oh,
It's
man.
good. It's good. It's good. You want to talk about bonus content?
I do want to talk about bonus content. So for those of you that are a fan of the podcast and want more podcasts, then if you become a Fisherman's Post premium content member, what you get is you get early access to all our podcast releases. So 1 week before the public release, you get access to the full podcast. You also get access to bonus content features only released to membership, never released publicly. In addition, that same membership gets you access to our weekly fishing reports, inshore, nearshore, up and down the entire North Carolina coast, delivered in audio-video format. And then we also have releases to our More Fish library, which is videos from our annual fishing schools in February. All that for one membership price. What a deal. Fisherman'sPost.com.
A bargain.
It is, man. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what we put together.
Good stuff. Well, if you would like, if you like the podcast, make sure to click like and subscribe on the old YouTube buttons.
Yes, please do that. We appreciate that. We're not numbers based, but you can't help but notice the numbers. And now, Dave, I'm getting ready to talk with our guest, Erin Weaver. Very much looking forward to talking about Sheepshead. And I'm coming back to you at the end for David's best takeaway.
Right on.
David's best takeaway.
My notes are waiting for me.
All right. Well, let's with no further ado, let's bring Erin Weaver to the stage. Let's introduce her to everyone. Hello, Erin Weaver.
Hello. What's up, Gary? How are you?
The YouTube.
Oh,
He's dog saying hello too. The
Oh,
Fins.
shh. It's okay.
The Fins and Fossils YouTube channel is yours. You operate out of the Topsail Island, but I don't want to assume anything. What I want to do is I want to qualify you as a guest, and for every guest that includes 2 questions. And if you're ready for question number 1, I will give you question number 1.
I'm hoping that my dog will cooperate, but I am ready.
All right. Question number 1, Erin Weaver. Why should we listen to anything you have to say about a sheepshead or fishing from an ocean pier?
I think that you should listen to me for anything that I have to say about fishing for sheepshead from an ocean pier specifically, because I get asked a ton of questions on the ocean pier, specifically Surf City Ocean Pier, when I am catching sheepshead out there. People say, what fish is that? How do you catch it? And then I just give them a whole rundown. So I've talked a lot of sheepshead on sheepshead fishing on ocean piers while on the ocean pier, because people see what's happening and they say, how do I do that? And they want to learn. So I'm happy to share that information, because I knew how excited I was when I kind of got it figured out. So I like to get people on their first sheepshead off the pier. It
Right.
tickles me as well.
Certainly qualifies as an acceptable answer for question number 1. For question number 2, and again,
Okay.
I'm like Terrell. I think I'm slipping as these podcasts goes further. So for you, Erin, I'm going to ask you slight trivia. I'm going to ask you about famous Erins, but this is Aaron, not Erin. Famous Erins.
Oh goodness. Okay.
Can you name a popular? Well, I won't say popular. I'll just say a football player, a quarterback.
Aaron Rodgers.
You got it right on. Good for you.
That's easy. I was like, please ask me about Aaron Rodgers.
A popular baseball player, New York Yankees. Courts in session.
Oh gosh.
Courts in session.
I'm thinking about Aaron Hernandez, but he's the football players that's.
Oh, that would have been an acceptable answer for the football player, even though I was looking for Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron,
Who presides over a court?
a judge.
Aaron Judge.
Oh, I don't even know who that is.
All right.
Sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
that still works. And then for the third, we're gonna go boring, and we're gonna go political. Third vice president of the USA killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Aaron.
Oh.
David, do you know this one?
I do. It's
David's a dork.
it's part
though.
of the Broadway play. He's like a major character of in Hamilton.
Go ahead and answer,
Haven't
Dave.
seen I haven't seen Hamilton, and my dad would be disappointed with my U.S. history knowledge right now.
You want me to?
You
You
can
want me to
do it,
spoil
yes.
Aaron
Yeah,
Burr?
you got-
Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr.
Aaron Burr.
Yeah, wouldn't have guessed that one.
All right, enough trivia, enough attempt at levity, enough setup. So I like, in our text, in our show notes and setting up the show, I like the thought. Like before we get into the basics, before we get into the when, where, what, how, I like the why. So for people wondering, why Sheepshead, Aaron, what's the allure? What do you get out of it? Why talk about it?
Yeah, so sheepshead, first of all, is a delicious fish to eat, and you can keep 10 of them a day. So if you're someone that is trying to fill up your cooler, and groceries are expensive right now, so if you're trying to fill up your cooler, put some good meat in your refrigerator, sheepshead is a great option. They're also super fun to catch. Once you get dialed into them, they can be a lot of fun. Another reason would be, specifically talking about fishing off of the pier. Pier fishing gives a lot more people access to the water. Not everybody goes to Marine Warehouse and gets their boat, and not everybody can afford to take a charter out. So, I'm one of them. I started fishing at the pier because I wanted to learn a lot about different species. And I'll start off by saying, number one, I've only been fishing since 2020. I got hooked on red drum, and then I wanted to learn all about all of the other species around here. So I started going to the pier, learned a lot about other species that way. And you'll find all walks of life, out on the pier. And there's a lot of people that go there because it is an easy way to get on the water, and an affordable way to be able to go and do some fishing, and to be able to figure out a way to catch, to limit out on sheepshead by spending $10 and walking out on the pier. A lot of people don't know that you can do that, and you absolutely can. So that's the why. And I figured out, I didn't even know that sheepshead were out there until, when I first started going out there, and it was, a day when it was slick and calm, and a beautiful looking day, but nothing else was biting. People were just, guys are just casting gotcha plugs into oblivion, nothing biting, but they're just keep on doing that, and people are throwing bottom rigs down, just catching pinfish. And I'm just looking around and absorbing everything around me, and I just look straight down and I say, what are those big beautiful fish all around these pilings? And I had no hesitation with asking questions to people out there, and I come to find out, well, those are sheepshead. I was like, well, why is no one targeting these? Why is no one catching them? They're here. And then say, well, they're hard to catch, you got to go get this bait and that bait, and they're really tricky. And I say, well, I want to figure that out. And so yeah, it was kind of a mission of mine to figure out how to catch sheepshead off of the Ocean Pier, and I have done that. So
All right. I like it. I'm intrigued, and I'm sure other people watching and listening to the podcast are intrigued. So let's go. So as far as when goes, if we look at the show notes and we say, hey, let's talk about when. So this podcast is being released, middle, end of July. Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing, since, we talked about summer sheepshead, that they do bite in summer. But why don't you give me a snapshot, since they are one of your favorite species, like, where summer ranks as far as like the better times to target them?
Yeah, so they will bite throughout from when they come in, and I know, and I've been paying more attention, especially this year. I paid more attention to when they moved into the pier, and that happened about early May. And for the first couple of weeks, they were very finicky, and they were not really biting. I think that they were just trying to get kind of comfortable being back in that environment. I noticed that they were swimming in full schools, which was really nuts to see, like a whole army of sheepshead swimming together underneath the pier and around. And then eventually, you kind of start seeing them after a few weeks break off, and they'll be split around on different pilings. And then they will be at the pier, gnawing on those pilings. Last year I was catching them up until right around Thanksgiving. But it's always a good time to catch sheepshead. They are always going to be hungry. But the summer is a good time, especially because when it's hot and some of those other fish are not biting that you come for in the spring and the fall, the sheepshead will be there. So it's kind of a sure thing that if you're not seeing some of those other species that you would hope to find, whiting or some reds or something like that, that look down and the sheepshead should be there.
All right. So I follow that. A follow-up on when then I guess would say, now that we're getting more specific into our summer sheepshead fishery that we're focusing on for this podcast, what about the question when, as it applies to early in the day, middle of the day, sun setting? What about high tide? What about low tide? And yeah, we use the Ocean Pier in the title, but I love that we're talking about Surf City Piers specifically. Ed and Vanita, big fans of them and the pier. So what about when in that regard?
Yeah. So, and these are just things that I have observed in the time, the couple years that I've been trying to get dialed in on them. Early in the morning, dawn, pre-dawn, is when they are less finicky. I think it's because they are very visual creatures. So they can, if you can see them, they can see your tackle. So earlier in the morning, they seem to be, more readily feeding, and also they can't see your tackle as well as if you are going to go and drop a bait in the middle of the day when the sun is coming right down. Also in the evening as well. So those low light situations. I've had a hard time kind of at night, just because of the way that the pier lights are, that they don't illuminate the pilings, and it kind of plays tricks on my eyes out there. So I haven't done a whole lot of nighttime sheepshead fishing, but I know that they are still there at night. It's just, for me, I like to be able to kind of see someone in the water, but yeah, the very middle of the day is a trickier time. I believe that that's more because of their ability to see what they're like, you can't trick me right now. I can see everything that you're doing. But you'll see them still feeding in the middle of the day. That's another thing is, that's the thing with pier fishing for sheepshead, is you're sight fishing for them. A lot of times you can see their activity, and that's kind of how I learned a lot about them. As far as tides, I do prefer to catch them, like my primo sheepshead time would be like dawn, high tide, or just before or after high tide, because right when it's not moving, they kind of, just like any other fish, they want a little bit of movement. Right at slack tide, it's like they kind of chill for a little bit. But if I can get that higher tide, you'll notice that they are coming up to feed on the barnacles that are now accessible with that higher tide that they couldn't get to. So you'll see them come up more on a higher tide. They're more visible, and they're coming up a little bit higher. And so I think that they might be a little bit more actively feeding on that higher tide as well.
I like that. I like the insight about high tide and visibility. What about, I know we have what bait, but before we get to that, I want to talk about the pier itself. So is any pylon a potential sheepshead holder, or while that might be true, inside the breakers you don't have visibility, so you're not really messing inside the breakers anyway?
Ooh, that depends, honestly, because I have seen, and it depends on conditions. Depends on conditions, because depending on the conditions, sometimes you can't see anything that's going on. But on some clear days, I have seen some donkeys inside of the breakers, like citation sized sheepshead inside of the breakers in very shallow water, just kind of hanging out. And I don't know if and they might not be feeding at the time. They're just kind of hanging out, or are they avoiding predators? I don't know, because there's a lot of predators out there, and that's something I'll talk to about, something I noticed today as well. But they're not just at the deep end. They will come, surprisingly, they will come shallow. But I think I noticed that more on a higher tide too, is that they will come up more, into that even the trough, the fish highway, they'll come up in there. But yeah, it depending on conditions, you'll see them or you won't see them. If it's very rough and there's big waves, they're not going to be up in there, because then that's just too much for them to, it's not worth it for them to fight that much, current and whatnot. I don't believe. That's what I think the sheepshead are thinking.
All right. Well, then let's transition to bait.
Oh, sorry.
Sure.
You were talking about pilings. So on Surf City Pier, there's a lot of just single pilings. But as the pier has undergone damage and whatnot, and repairs, etc., there are some other cut off pilings that might be next to another piling. So like two pilings next to each other, and it's pretty much just more structure. If you look down and you say, "Oh, that looks like a place that I would get hung up," it's more likely to hold sheepshead. So I have noticed that those are the places that I see them more, are pilings where there's maybe two pilings together, or one has fallen over and it's next to each other. I think that's it. Maybe it gives them more cover. Is it because there's more barnacles there or more food? I'm not really sure why, but I have noticed that they'll congregate and hang out at those areas longer than they will where on the single pilings they'll just kind of hang out there and then move to the next one, then move to the next one. But they'll seem to kind of hang out longer at those kind of dual pilings, if you will.
I like it. I like an insight into the behavior. For bait from the piers, I guess, what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me your favorite? You're going to give me a couple of options?
A couple options. Because I don't like to go out with just one bait. You never know what they're going to want to do. My choice bait would be a mud crab. I have gone out there before with fiddler crabs before sometimes, and they don't want anything to do with the fiddler crabs. And sometimes I don't know why that is. So I will bring some fiddler crabs, and I will bring some mud crabs if the tide has been right for me to go and get them, because you can only find mud crabs when the tide is right, which would be you have to go out at a lower tide in the marsh and go. If you don't know how to catch mud crabs, you have to go to like an oystery area or a rocky area and go where it'd be muddy under those rocks and oysters, and you have to go where it at low tide and flip over rocks and oysters that are exposed at low tide but would be covered at high tide, and that's where you're going to find your mud crabs. So it's time dependent on getting mud crabs. However, another reason I like mud crabs is I can keep them alive longer than I can keep fiddler crabs alive, because they just kind of hunker down in their bucket, as long as you keep them happy and with some water, water and some shells. And fiddler crabs are always running around. I think they have a higher metabolism, and they seem to like kill each other and stuff. So the mud crabs seem to live longer as well. Another great bait that you can use out there are barnacles. If you have access to, a dock or somewhere where you can go and scrape some nice sized barnacles, you can definitely use those. I haven't been able to hook one on barnacles yet, but I definitely get bit. If I'm using barnacles, I get bit for sure. They work. I just haven't been able to, get one hooked up on a barnacle yet. Live shrimp. They love live shrimp, but so does everything else. So timing, if you're going to use live shrimp, you have to do it when the pinfish are sleeping. So in those low light hours is when you're going to have better luck with live shrimp. But sheepshead will crush some live shrimp as well. Another one is sea urchin, which is something that I finally was able to hook one up on a live sea urchin, which those are, you can't really, well, I'm sure there's probably some tackle shops where you can buy them, but I go and find mine at my secret spot here on Topsail. But I'm sure that other places around here probably have, more areas where you can go and find those. That's something I have to go and find again at low tide. So something you have to time. But they, after doing some research, that if you want to kind of weed out the small sheepshead and you want to try to get to a bigger sheepshead, uh, they will eat sea urchins for sure. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to hook them and present them, etc. But I finally did uh, pick up a nice sheepshead on a sea urchin as well. I know some people use mussels. The clusters of black mussels. If those are prevalent in your area, you can use those. We don't have them here, so I don't use them. I don't have access to them. I have also used the little ribbed marsh mussels. I've used those as well for bait for sheepshead, and those work. They love those too, but so does everything else. If you cut them out of the shell and you use some of that magic thread, but they're not as hardy. The mud crab it's hardy. It stays on the hook. Pinfish won't mess with it. The only thing that's going to eat those things is going to be a sheep's head or a black drum, or a red drum, but not near a piling really generally in the ocean. So that's my go-to bait.
All right.
That's
I love that.
a lot
There's
of bait
many options.
info.
Yes. A lot of options. So let's transition to rigs. Before you get me to terminal tackle, though, just tell me what, and I'm not, you're welcome to plug or just tell me the basics of rod and reel and line, and then work your way to the terminal tackle. And then once we're on the same page with terminal tackle, we'll talk about, hooking the mud crab or hooking the fiddler crab. We'll pick a couple of your bait options and focus on those.
Yeah. So honestly, my rod and reel setup that I'm using right now is not probably the ideal one that I should be using for sheepshead. I'm sure, I've been told, by some old timers, if you get a citation on there, you might snap that rod. So I've just been fishing with my Fenwick HMG inshore rod, 7'6", with I think I've just got a Daiwa BG like 2500 on there, and that seems to do the trick. It's so when I'm fishing for sheepshead, I'm not like dropping my bait down and then just like setting my rod down on the side of the pier like a lot of people do. I am literally hanging my whole body over the railing and holding my rod straight down and pointing it in the direction of the piling. I'll end up with bruised bruised ribs, and some raw skin after a long day of doing it. But it's good to have a rod with some length on it so that you can kind of steer where your line is going, to stay next to that piling. That's a trick, is to make sure that you're getting your bait as close to that piling as possible, which is tricky out in the ocean. I braid for sure. You don't want to be using mono because you'll break off. There's so much stuff to break off on, especially barnacles or something like that. Absolutely braid. And I think I've got like maybe 30 on there, but there's a gentleman that we call him Tim the Shepherd. He's this old timer out there, and he fishes with 80-pound braid on his sheepshead reel. He uses a different method, and I'll probably get into that, but that's so he makes sure he does not break his braid off on there. Definitely a fluoro leader, and the fluoro leader that I use depends upon the clarity of the water. I would prefer to use something 30-pound, but sometimes when it's very clear and they're very finicky, I have to go lighter to 20, 15, because I'm worried that, or are they not biting because they can see my leader line, and then I go down a little bit. But there's usually a lot of stuff you can break off on, so you got to find that happy medium. I am excited there's a custom rods maker. I'm sure plenty of y'all have heard about it. Mott's Rods out of Winston-Salem. I've actually been talking with him. He is, because of the closures of some other species, he is out actually now going to be making a sheepshead rod. And so I'm excited that I'm going to be able to test that one out. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about that. He's going to make something with a little bit stronger backbone than what I have been using, and I think that that's something that is important in case you get one of those big fish on. That would be a heartbreaker if I did hook up to a citation and the end of my rod snapped. But I fish with what I have. I'm not in the market to go spend another $150, $200 on a new rod right now. So I just fish with my HMG because I use that for a lot of different stuff out there. If I want to switch over to casting a metal jig or something, that works too. So that's what I use. But use what you've got. You don't want to use something super heavy because you need to feel the sensitivity of the bite. But you also don't want to be using something very light either, because they will take you for a ride and they will take you under the pier and just snap that rod. So.
Well, man, that was good. I love both the details and addressing the question why, because I just believe my audience works that way. They want to know details and they want to know why 30 or why 15-pound leader, for example. So to continue the terminal tackle, whether it's 30, 20, or 15-pound fluoro, I guess my first question would be, do you have a length of leader in mind? And then what do you tie on the end of the leader?
I usually go probably about, I would say 2 to 3 feet leader. And I use my preferred hook, and everybody's got their own way that they like to do it. I use these are called ledge tenders, made by a company called First Flight Lures. He's out of Rocky Point right here, just up the road. And he makes all kinds of different tackle, but these I felt have worked best for me. This one's called, the color's called Bama Crawl, so it blends in. It looks a lot like, the mud crab color for the crab color, and it doesn't stand out too much from the piling as well. The reason I like to use these, a lot of people will fish with a Carolina rig style, and I get that. And that might work better inshore, but when you're fishing from such a distance and a height, um, it can be very hard to feel that bite. It's hard to feel a sheep's head bite anyway, even if you're just fishing off of a boat at a bridge piling. But then you add in, whatever distance that is from standing on the deck of the pier and then down to the water. You've got all of that line in between. So I find that when the hook is fixed to the weight, I can feel that bite a lot more than when there is slack between the weight and then there's some leader line and then you've got your hook swaying, because then I feel like, with all that current that's just swaying, and these sheep's head, they bite just like do, 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 very lightly. And, I might miss a bite. Or also, if they bite this, that hook is not turning at all. If they've got just a hook on leader, the way that they bite, I feel like they're just able to like turn that hook in their mouth. I know that people have plenty of success with Carolina rig. This is just my personal preference in what I have found that works best for me particularly. But I've got 2 sizes here. This one's a 1 ounce and this is a 1/2 ounce. I always want to go as light as possible as I can, only due to size, because they are very visual and they can see it. So I don't want them to see it as much. I mean, I would rather use something heavy so that I can actually keep the weight, or my jig as close to the piling as possible. And also, what's important to feel that bite is to have some kind of tension in your line. If your line's just kind of swaying by the piling, it makes it really hard. You might feel like a tap tap, and then you're like, oh, I think I just got a bite, and you did, your bait's gone. But that's because you your rig was too buoyant in the water anyway that you couldn't even feel that bite. So it's trying to find that happy medium for the situation and for the conditions that you're fishing in. And you just have to play around with it. I'll bring several different sizes out with me, and I'll start with the lightest that I can, and then if I have to gear up and go heavier, then I will. But that's what I like to use: first flight ledge tenders. So.
Okay. I'm going to ask a question. I don't always ask this question. I mean, it's not like a big deal question, but then we're going to move into how you put the mud crab and or the fiddler crab on the ledge tender. So as far as the knot, man, is it a cinch knot or do you like a loop knot to give it a little bit more?
I just do a cinch knot. Do a cinch knot.
And then, all right, let's start with mud crab. How are you putting the mud crab on that ledge tender?
So I do the mud crab and the fiddler crab the same way. And I have one of my little friends here for you. Let me get him out. I don't have my mud crabs. I had a hard time finding mud crabs this morning, but I say hello to my little friend. He's a bigger one. But first, I break a claw off. Oh, I just got fiddler crab juice on my computer. Let me dry that off real quick.
Sure.
He is juicy. So one thing that's important that I have noticed that some other people make the mistake of doing is they will bait their hook and then their crab will be all the way down here. Well, a lot of times I'll notice that a fiddler or a sheepshead will come up and feed from underneath, and they'll just bite that crab right off of there and not even touch the tip of your hook. So the way that I like to bait my hooks is I will usually just put it right through the back of the crab, dab, 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 and then I just push that hook down until I can just barely feel that tip of that hook coming out of his face, just like that.
Okay, so for my people that are listening, not watching, you're coming up. Yeah. You're coming up from the bottom.
Coming up from the bottom, and then I've got the hook that just barely. I use my finger just to like feel when the tip of the hook is coming out of its face. I do not want a whole lot of hook protruding from this bait at all. I want the sheepshead to not even know that there's a hook there. I want the sheepshead to come and start nibbling away at that crab, mud crab or fiddler crab, and not know that there's a hook there, and then just be very surprised when I set that hook in the roof of its mouth. So yeah, I go up through the back end. I kind of have it facing to where the legs are kind of dancing in their face. Sometimes I'll put the belly out. Sometimes I'll turn it around and put the belly backwards. I don't really have a rhyme or reason as to, it just depends on, there's no rhyme or reason as to why I do that. But yeah, it's a good presentation for me. I believe it makes the crab look lively. Its legs will still be dancing around, and the sheepshead does not know that there's a hook there until it's in the roof of its mouth. But I do the same thing with the mud crab as well, but I will adjust it sometimes if you notice that just the front of your bait is getting bit off. You can always, set that crab back a little bit further on the hook, but definitely do not put your bait all the way down at the bottom of the hook and have the top, the tip and the barb and everything exposed, because you'll just get your bait ripped off of the bottom and it's pointless. So you want to have that hook embedded in that crab.
All right, I have 2 follow-up questions. And maybe more, but we'll start with 2 follow-up questions. So the 2 follow-up questions, because again, I just imagine, the second one, I imagine people want to know the question why. So the first one is, so you're not concerned about hooking that fiddler crab or mud crab in a way that keeps it alive. It is just the water that'll then move the legs after you've put a hook up through the middle, or does it stay alive?
It'll live for a little while, and I usually go out with enough fiddler crabs anyway that if I don't get bit pretty quick and I notice that it's dead, I'll just change it out and put another one on. No, I don't want to hook it in a way that the crab's just going to get ripped off. I want it to have like a good presentation on there, and it will live for a good bit like that. I don't know how they are like that, but they do live for a good little while like that. Sometimes I'll hook them a little bit further back, but usually if the sheepshead are there and they're biting, um they that crab will get messed up pretty quick by a fish. And so I don't worry about keeping that crab alive that long. It'll live for a little while on there. It doesn't die immediately when I hook it like that, not that I've noticed. If it stays on there for 10 minutes, then that's not really a great sheepshead day anyway. So, and then I'll just rip it off and change it, and put on a fresh one. So I'm not too concerned with that. I'd rather it be a better looking presentation than worrying about, and also a more secure hooking, so that the sheepshead's not just going to rip the crab off if I just hook it like right through, maybe where its leg is or something like that. That's just my personal preference. I'm sure somebody's going to let us know in the comments, as they usually do on YouTube.
All right. My second question, in the spirit of why, would be, why take off the claw?
Oh, well, so I've always been taught to take off the claw. Now that guy had a big claw, and I don't want that to deter the fish from biting it. But also, I have had issues when I leave the claw on that they'll grab onto the line. They'll grab onto the leader line.
Okay.
So to me, that's a good enough reason. And also, it eliminates you from getting pinched. And I don't know that the fish really like the claw. The female fiddler crabs don't have a claw, and they get eaten too. So yeah, take the claw off, throw it over. I don't think that there's any reason to keep the claw on.
Okay. Now let's.
Yeah.
So I think you have a setup. So now I guess we'll switch to more, and you've already hinted on some of these things, but let's dive into presentation now. You've got your mud crab or your fiddler crab, you're on the pier, you've already eyeballed a couple of, pilings, and what happens next?
Yeah, so one thing that's really important is that, again, they are very finicky, and in that clear water, they can be really spooky. So I will hang myself over, by the waist, kind of hang myself over the piling and very slowly like lower my bait into the water. I don't want to make any splashes at all. I just like gently just lower that line down until my bait is in the water. If I'm sight fishing and I can see kind of where they are, then I know about how deep I need to put my bait. If I'm blind dropping, then I will slowly lower it down to the bottom and then reel up a couple, 3-4 reels, get it off of the very bottom. And then I'll just try to kind of keep it steered. You've got the sway of the waves, and I just try to keep it as close to the piling as I can. It's frustrating when you can see a sheepshead feeding on the piling, but your bait is just like right behind its tail, and it doesn't even know that it's there. But that's the biggest thing about presentation, really, is being quiet and stealthy. It's like a tactical kind of fishing, but just being real easy and slow with it. I've seen people just drop it down. I'm like, no, you're gonna spook them all away. So just being very slow and taking your time and having patience with that is really the best way to do it. Because sometimes I'll even lower it down really slow and they'll still just go nope and go off to the next piling. But that's another thing, is sometimes I can feel like I'll see one on one piling, so I'll go to that piling and I'll drop my bait down. And I always say it's kind of like changing lanes in traffic. You see a lane moving quickly, so you go over to that lane, and then that lane stops, and then the lane you were in starts moving. So sometimes you just have to be patient and just like let your baits, sit there for a few minutes, because this sheepshead will go. They'll kind of like go to this piling and then go to this piling and then go to this piling and this one, and then they'll come back. They'll have like a little rhythm that they do. So sometimes you just have to be patient and just wait for them to come to you. You can also chum too. People will chum with barnacles. Sometimes I'll use those marsh mussels and crush them up and throw them down there to get them to come over to you as well. But as far as presentation, that's it really. Just making sure that you've got the smallest tackle, jig, weight, etc. that you can possibly use, and then just being really slow and quiet.
All right. So we're going to imagine now that we followed your advice with rod and reel, terminal tackle, rig, bait, and presentation. And we're starting to feel something down there. And so now I want you to walk me through your strategy with hook set. Like what gets you excited? What do you ignore or be patient about? And what gets you to try to set the hook?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because your adrenaline starts going. But yeah, sometimes I think, and that's something that I think takes a while to really get the feel of, is like, when are they just nibbling the legs, or are they actually going for the meat? Do I have like a good bite? And sometimes you will have a good bite and you'll go ahead and pull it, but they literally just took half the crab and they didn't bite the hook. So that's just the name of the game. If I just feel like a doot doot, I'm gonna let it sit there. But when I feel like these are my sound effects. But like, if I feel like a little bit more of a pull, then and I usually wait till I get about like nibble, and then I just like it. You can hear it audibly in my YouTube content every time. Every time I do it, and it's a hard hook set, because you want that. They've got a very hard palate in the roof of their mouth, and you want that hook to go straight up in there. And sometimes I've had it come up and out out their snout, their nose. But that's really what you want. You want that hook to go all the way up, because they will fight like the dickens, and they will, if you don't have a good hook set, they will get off. Oh, that's another thing. Have your drag set pretty tight when you're out there, because if you have your drag set loose, they will run you around. It does not take long for them to wrap around a piling, and then it's over. You've lost that fish, you've lost your tackle, and you've broken off. So that's another thing I didn't want to forget, is making sure you can just go barely just pull. I don't know how to talk in poundage on drag.
Sure.
I just go by feel, where you pull and it's like just a little bit, and make sure your drag is set tight, because I've lost some fish when I was just learning, because my drag was too loose. But yeah, you'll summon that hook will not be in their mouth at all. They've just bitten half of the crab, and your jig will go flying up, and that's just part of it. I probably lose about 5 to 10 crabs for every one I actually hook.
All right, we are almost out of time, but I want to get this. I guess we'll call it a last question.
Really?
In.
That was fast.
I know it goes fast. So, I mean, again, I know we could talk more, but if I'm just trying to put this sheepshead fishing to its completion, I get a hook, I have a sheepshead. Am I reeling that thing up over the rail, or do I need a net?
It depends on how confident you are in your hook set.
Okay.
If you have used one of these and you feel like if it's fighting and you can tell that you've got a hook, I've rail flipped 3.5 pounders. Anything more than that, I probably wouldn't. But I do bring. I'll holler for a net. But here's another thing. Sometimes they shrink as they come up, and then sometimes after you've hollered for a net a couple of times and you're like, man, that fish is smaller than it looked when it was down there, then you feel kind of silly. So you start kind of rail flipping them and getting a little ballsy with that. But But if I was using a Carolina rig, I probably would have a hard time feeling comfortable rail flipping them. But I've gotten really comfortable with like knowing when I've got a good hook set with these guys, because they will really be in there. So it really just depends. I prefer to net them. If I could have somebody net all of my decent sheepshead, I would. I just, you're pulling somebody away from their other, their fishing that they're doing. If you've got a buddy that's there with you, then awesome. Have them net every single fish. Have them net every single fish. But you can always try rail flipping one, unless it's a monster and you're like, you know, you'll know. I think that you'll know. It's one of those things. You say, I need a net on this fish, please, now. Thank you.
All right. Now, this is my final question, and I'm even going to do it a two-part because it's
Okay.
final. First, and so let me get both of them out. First question is, any final thoughts on sheepshead fishing from Ocean Piers? Anything I didn't set you up or we didn't get a chance to talk about? And then the final question is, hey, let our viewers and listeners know more about Fins and Fossils, your YouTube channel.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think as far as sheepshead fishing on the pier, give it a try. If you are coming from, a little ways away, I know some people drive, all the time from 2 hours away to come fish on Surf City Pier, and I feel bad when they get out there and it's just a day that nothing is biting, but I'm there just pulling sheepshead up, and they don't have what they need to do it. Go ahead and make sure you've got the right jigs or hooks, or have a rig ready for some sheepshead, and maybe contact the local tackle shop before you come to find out if they have fiddler crabs, or if they have some kind of bait that you can use for sheepshead. Another trick, and I haven't tried it yet, but I do want to try it, and I've seen another YouTuber do it. I'm sure a lot of people have seen him. Black-eyed peas, cans of black-eyed peas, I guess because they look like barnacles, but I've got some in my pantry. I'm ready to try that out one day. But it can't hurt to have a little can of those in your tackle box or in your bag in case nothing else is biting on the pier that what you wanted to come for. But just try it. It's the people, the reaction I see when people get their first sheepshead, they're like, oh my God. But you have to be tenacious. Stay patient, keep trying. It is a very frustrating fish to fish for, but it is so freaking gratifying once you get one up, and once you get dialed into them and you get them figured out. I had taught one of my trout fishing buddies how to do it, and he was getting frustrated at first, but recently he sent me messages like, Erin, thank you for teaching me how to sheepshead fish, because now I am obsessed with it, because it's fun, it's challenging, and it's one of those just real active fishing that you can lose hours of your time and not even know that you've been out doing it for 6 hours. It's so much fun.
All right, so tell us about Fins and Fossils, your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So, my YouTube channel, I started that on a whim when I started fishing back in 2020. And some of it's kayak based, some of it is pier based, some of it is surf based. And again, not a professional. I just kind of started that after 6 months of fishing, and it's more of just like my fishing adventures. A lot of it's kind of goofy. My little buddy Oshi's and maybe a couple of those videos. But I try to keep it real, about, some of these fishing channels and fishing videos, they make it seem like every day is just, you get on all these fish and there's nothing bad goes wrong. Well, yeah, I make sure to include when some kerfluffles that happen, or sometimes there's just one fish days, or or the stingrays or the lizardfish and all of those kinds of things. I just really try to keep it real and just try to share the fun that I have, that in my discovery of my love for fishing. I wish I knew I loved fishing 20 years ago. I would have been done doing it a lot longer. But yeah, please go ahead and check it out, subscribe to the channel. And I've got some footage that I need to edit. I've been doing too much fishing, and I need to do more editing and not fishing. But I definitely have some videos in the pipeline that I am working on, and one of them is a sheepshead video, but it's from the kayak.
Well, right on. Erin Weaver, based out of Topsail Island. It's been a treat talking sheepshead fishing
thank
from
you.
Ocean Piers with you. Made my job easy. I barely had to ask any questions. You just were full of information, willing to share. And, look forward to, our next interaction. Looking forward to talking fishing with you more.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary.
Yep. Well, David Harden.
Hey, Gary.
You can't, and your David's best takeaway can't be black-eyed peas, by the way.
Oh,
I'm going to take that off
I've
the
never
table.
heard that. I've never heard that before. But there was something else. There was something else that she said that I'd never heard of either. Is sort of the way that she presents the bait when she's leaning over the pier, pointing the rod straight down, which makes sense because it'll get as close to the piling as you can get it, and then slowly lower it rather than just chucking it in there like everybody else does.
Yeah, it's strategic. It's insightful. And we're going to imagine effective. Although, Dave, I'm not going to encourage you to hang over the rail of the pier. I'm going to ask you to be more conservative.
I would need a harness or some sort of safety mechanism, probably.
I mean, I'm sure nothing would happen.
No.
Actually, you should go for it. Actually, I take back my concern. I think you should go for it.
We could read that. I'll send you a picture and you can put it in the paper.
Oh, man, what a great show.
It was good. It was good. If you like the shows, make sure to like and subscribe to them on YouTube.
Yeah, man. And if you're a fan of the podcast and just want more podcasts, remember premium content memberships. You get early podcast release, bonus podcast content, weekly fishing reports in audio and video format, as well as more fish video library access.
Right on. Before we go, let's thank our sponsors.
Hey, let's do
One more time. Port City Signs and Graphics.
Yes.
YourBoatMoney.com.
Yes.
And Marine Warehouse Center.
Great sponsors, great podcast. Thank you for everything, David.
Sure thing.